Yo, it's your boy Logos, and today we're gonna react to some Thomas Sowell clips. This time, Joe Rogan learning about Thomas Sowell, a person who I think doesn't get enough attention compared to other people, like athletes or celebrities or actresses or musicians. And this man has a lot of wisdom and knowledge to give us, and he's very old, so who knows how long he's gonna be on this earth. So I feel like it's important for us to listen as long as we can, because we're not always gonna have somebody like him to learn from and give us the truth in an honest, direct manner. So let's get into it.
So, do you know Thomas Sowell?
I know that name. Why do I know that name?
Thomas Sowell is a big, famous conservative. He's at Stanford. He's at the Hoover Institute, I think. Anyway, so, within this, first, just to set all this up, we should set up briefly, how does culture work, right? And the way culture works is that it, like genetic evolution, it works based on blind copying. So what ends up happening is that you are in awe of people, right? You look up to people. And so you blindly copy the things they do. And specifically, you start by blindly copying from the outside, and then you work in. Thomas Sowell is a black guy, right? Okay. And Thomas Sowell has, for years and years and years, been trying to fight.
So I should have stopped earlier. But what he said about copying cultures, I can kind of see that. I wish he would have went more in depth into it. But the Romans, they copied the Greeks. And after the Western Roman Empire broke apart, the French, the British, the Germans, the Russians, they all copied Roman culture and history. The Tsar, that's just another play on Caesar, from, Julius Caesar, Augustus, and so on and so on. The French, where there was a Roman territory for a long time, so of course they had culture that was a part on them, but at the same time keeping a bits and pieces of their own specific identity that they had before Roman conquest came onto them. So there's some truth to that other civilizations see other civilizations that is more advanced, or they see stuff they want to copy and they carry that on.
Racism, but he's been trying to fight racism by having a conversation about culture, right? And the fact that there are essentially two different sort of, we're speaking broadly here, right? But this is for the purposes of communication. We're going to tell a simple story to start off with, right? So broadly speaking, he puts two different cultures of people with dark skin next to each other. And one culture is these people from the West Indies, and one culture is this group of people who grew up in the South with slavery and all that sort of stuff. Now, what one group, the West Indies group, does really well. So a lot of the successful black people like Colin Powell, are originally from that cultural heritage. The other group is the group that you find in ghettos and African-American communities and all of that sort of stuff. They don't do well, right? They don't get good education. They, shoot each other. There are all these sorts of things. And the reason why Sowell has been telling this story is because he's been trying to say, when liberals look at the people in ghettos, they say, racism. That's why they're not succeeding. And Sowell is saying, no, it's not. Because if you look at this group from the West Indies, they also came from the experience of slavery. There was slavery in the West Indies. They are also black, so they also face racism, and yet they do well. So it has to be something else.
I think that's a very good point. And honestly, that's kind of the point of this channel. There's stuff within the black community and our culture that is very poisonous and toxic to our improvement and progression. Gang culture, drug culture, gangster rap, there's so many things. Single motherhood, baby mama, baby daddy, the way we just wipe that stuff away, act like it's no big deal. We have black children falling behind on reading scores. There's just so many stuff that we need to focus on. And I feel like it goes beyond racism. We need to take accountability. And that's what this whole channel is about.
And that other thing is the fact that these black people who are in the South, there's always been a big question, were black people robbed of their culture, or did they preserve their authentic African culture? And what Sowell is saying is that they were robbed of their culture, and so they picked up the culture of the people around them, and the people around them were rednecks. And if you look at the white redneck culture and the black redneck culture, they have a lot of the same values. They don't particularly respect education. They love Jesus. They use violence in their conflicts, and they, there's just, a lot of the same values and a lot of the same outcomes. And even Ebonics, which is, Black English, is actually all from the west of England. So it's actually this.
What?
It's from the west of England. So, for example, if you go to places like Cornwall, there used to be these amazing ads on British TV, right, for this Devon custard or whatever, and they would always say, Devon knows how they make it so creamy, and they all talk like this, right? And so it doesn't sound like Black English, but they do say things like, I be doing that, and we be doing this, and you be doing that, and they be doing that. And so there's that use of that copula be, right, where instead of saying I am, you are, he is, she is, they are, they just say I be, you be, we be, they be, which is the classic feature of Black English, African American.
That is true. Then that is true. I never heard that before. I never heard of like the West English ties to it. Maybe that'll be something I'll research and look into in another video, because it is very interesting. And maybe in the next upload or so, I could find Thomas Sowell particularly talking about culture and comparing it to people from the West Indies, because that is very, very true. And it's not just the West Indies. It's Black people from Africa who migrate over to the United States. A lot of times they are very successful, even if they started out here poor and they're immigrant.
Vernacular English. Right. Now, the point is that
Mind blower.
Mind blower. Now, let's imagine that. How do you think that Thomas Sowell has been received by liberal America? Not well.
They receive him as a coon, a sellout. They say he's an Uncle Tom and all types of other nonsense. And of course, there's ignorant Black people saying that, but I'm also willing to bet there's white people saying that. And then some may be crazy enough to just straight up say coon, but some others will say it in different ways, more office, politically correct ways, but at the same time claim to be against racism. But you know how these white liberals be with their little subtle, underhanded racism themselves.
Not well. And so, for example, Sowell has a book called Black Rednecks, White Liberals. Okay? And his whole point is that, if you actually, and, again, like Sowell is, he researches the shit out of this stuff. He really does his work. Now, if you look at the experience of African Americans after slavery, they start to make real progress. Right? And a large part of the reason why they make progress is because you start to get a lot of people from New England, either, Black people from New England or white people from New England, who come down and sort of reshape the culture. They create these schools and they're teaching those New England values, right? It's those Puritan values of hard work, tenacity, all of that sort of stuff. And so there's all this progress. And you have people like Booker T. Washington. And Booker T. Washington was an actual slave. And then after he got his freedom, he got to go work in a salt mine, which is literally the worst job ever. And
yes.
in Booker...
A salt mine, I think that's what Francis Ngannou had to work at. The UFC, the former UFC fighter, heavyweight champion, who's turning towards boxing now. From my memory, he used to work in a salt mine growing up. And that shit was hell.
Booker T. Washington's up from slavery, he tells this great story about seeing a schoolhouse, right? And that, he thought that going into a schoolhouse was about as close to heaven on earth as you could get.
Whoa.
Like, this is a dude who wanted an education really, really badly. And that's a lot of what you find in the...
And we have high school dropout rate so high. We have problems with education within the Black community. And this man, 100 or a few hundred years ago, saw going to a school as heaven on earth.
The early Black experience in the post-slavery period. And in fact, Blacks, before sort of World War II actually had higher rates of marriage than whites. All of these sorts of things that, are now supposedly a problem. And then there's this turnaround, right? The Black experience starts to go south, right? It starts to get worse.
And what year is this around?
This is post-World War II, right? So
post-slavery, Black people experience a rebounding.
They're starting to make some progress. There's ambition.
Progress.
Yeah. And I mean, if in terms of books to read, like, because a large part of what I'm trying to do in general is really let's move to the place of all people are created equal. Like, let's remove all these stupid distinctions, right, and really live that principle. And the problem is that in order to really live that principle, you need a new narrative that beats slavery. So, it's not, if you go and talk to racists, you can't just say racism is bad. Like, that doesn't destroy racism.
Right.
What destroys racism is when you make sense of the things that they know, right? They see, people who are violent in the ghettos, or they see crime, or they see a lack of education, or they see that Africa is poor. And you're able to tell a better story that makes sense of the things that they know, but also comes out with the conclusion, oh, we actually all have the same potential.
I completely agree. I feel like the best way to fight racism, I guess, isn't to scream in people's face and say you're evil and bad. Because for for the most part, if they think you're a lesser person, why would they care about the opinion of somebody thinking they're evil? They always see us as less than to begin with. I think just progress within our communities, showing black excellence, going for the right things, and showing there's no way in hell you could possibly think I'm inferior with all the success that we have. And that's not done to just prove white people or any other people a way to think about us. It's just to prove ourselves and they can think what they want. But as long as we progress and be successful, it doesn't matter. And that's just how I feel about it. I'm gonna try to find more Thomas Sowell stuff on the Black American culture. I see something here about Ebonics, but that shit like 2 hours long. So maybe I could cut up into like parts and we could talk about it. But that's it for now. It's your boy Logos, and I'll talk to y'all next time.